Morning everyone. Here's the second video of the webinar series regarding the conditioning. This time for the seniors. Just like I said to the during the junior video, I'm gonna try to keep it very simple, very basic, to make sure that you guys have something to work towards straight at the end of the video. Okay. So we're gonna start straight away with. I'm gonna divide this video in three different parts. So the before, during, and after training session, because that's what we're talking about. So the before, you need to understand the context you have first, and then second, you need to understand also what your player needs and what sort of objective you're gonna aim for during your preparation phase. Understand the context is most of the time I've got a lot of questions regarding okay, how many times we need to train per week. It's not necessarily how many times you need to train, but okay, how much time do you have? If you have only 2 trainings a week, you need to find the best way to catch up with your obligations, with the things you want to work on, and also the other things regarding the players, their lives, the fact that they are amateurs, basically. Okay, if you can't change that, okay, at least focus your energy on controlling the things you can control. The during will be how you're gonna manage that during the training. How you're gonna be able to influence your conditioning session and set up your trainings to make sure you get the best out of it. And then the after, how you're gonna be able to control and assess your sessions, and then find out if you are on target regarding your goals. So before understanding the context, so like I was saying, sometimes you use the SMART principle, or you can try to phrase different question like this, where you're gonna have the what is your goal, what is the aim for the training block, what sort of how many times you can train per week, what sort of resources you have, field coaches, cones, balls, etc., etc. How are you going to do this within your session? Don't overcomplicate things. Again, you know your environment better than anyone else. Okay, so don't force things. If you have only few balls, few coins in the field, that's all you need, and the players obviously. But that's all you need. So you need to find a way to, again, with what you have, to make the most out of it. Now the energy system. So most of the time people overcomplicate this. So it's a lot of graphics, a lot of lines. It sounds very, very difficult, but it all comes down to intensity and volume. Okay, you can't sprint for 2 hours. Okay, so it remains very simple. So within your body, you got something called ATP. It's adenosine triphosphate. It's an organic compound that provides energy for all the cells of your body. So that's what allow you to walk, move your arms, etc. Basically, all the muscle contraction and all the energy needed for all your cells. The problem with ATP is stored in a limited amount within your body. So that's why within these different systems, you're going to be able to supply another amount of ATP and then carry on the exercise or the movements. So you got three main ones. You got the ATP PC system, which is phosphocreatine. It's no more than 10-15 seconds basically. So it's for very, very high intensity or high burst of energy. The second one will be lactic system. So same, you can still maintain a decent level of intensity, but again for a limited amount of time. And then the last one will be aerobic system with a lower type of intensity exercises, but you can go for a very long period of time. You have to choose what is best suited for your team, but again, you have to work your way up. So you can't straight away attack by doing full sprint if your players are just coming back from summer holidays or just coming back from injuries. So you need to find the right balance and also define what you want to achieve with your players. Most of the time is the question I have again is, my players are not fit enough. Okay, but what sort of fitness are you looking at? Do you want your players to sustain 80 minutes of the game? Do you want your players to be able to repeat high intensity efforts? Do you want your players to be able to handle a sort of average demand for a short period of time? All these requires a different type of systems. So again, that's why you need to plan all these before. You need to again find out what you want to achieve with your guys. So now those are the guidelines. So again, like I was saying, you work your way up. So you always start from the bottom basically. the recovery part is not necessarily important at our level, because most of us train 2 to 3 times a week, but it's already more than enough to have some improvement. So you will always start at the beginning of the season with some aerobic endurance or aerobic power. So you always have these two sort of version if you look at all the different other aspects. So you got always a power endurance. Endurance is obviously the amount of time you can repeat it over a certain period of time. And then the power is how intense you can go for a certain period of time. So you always start by building a sort of capacity, and then you bring that into the power phase. So most of the thing we need in rugby are based between the anaerobic glycolytic power and then the aerobic power. So if you look at the work rest ratio, you can do the same when you videotape your own games. So you stop and start every time the ball is out of play, or there is a set piece, or basically every time there is a stop in the game, and then you will see the average demands of your game. So if you train, for example, your players at very high intensity for 10-15 seconds, but most of your demands are within a minute, even 2 minutes block, obviously you're gonna end up having problems. Yes, your players need to do high intensity type of exercises or actions, but on the other hand, they need to sustain that for a certain amount of time. So just to put you that into the context, so again, when it comes down to conditioning, having two session a week for most of us, you need to make sure you make the most out of it. So what I mean by that is, don't overcomplicate things. Try to again mix that within your session. As long as you're in charge of the time, in charge of the intensity, the rest will be fine. So rather than just doing running, setting up cones, and then running for 20 minutes, is 20 minutes taking away from your session. Try to find a drill where they're gonna have the same type of runnings but with the ball involved. So you're still working on your drills and skills, but yet you're also working on the conditioning. So it's a sort of two-in-one type of thing. So in that particular case, I work the plan over a 6 week period. So you always start at the end. What you want them to be able to do once competition time arrives, and then you work your way down until today. Okay, so then you will need to define the intensity for every exercise. The talk, you need to limit your talk as much as you can. Okay, it's gonna be during water break or before or after the training, not during, because otherwise you take the intensity away, and then they're gonna have too much rest, which then creates a problem in terms of, if you look at the guidelines again, if you got too much rest, then you work something else. You're not working on the rest ratio you should aim for. And then same, fitness is very hard for your players. They really work hard for you, so you need to accept that they're gonna do some mistake, they're gonna drop some balls. That's fine, that's part of the process. You can't expect on week 1 to already achieve what they should do on week 6. And then keep the focus on the area of the conditioning before going to something else. If you want them to be able to handle a certain type of effort for, let's say, a minute and a half, don't be mad at them because they can't sustain really high intensity things over a 10 seconds period or something like this, because you haven't trained for them yet. Okay, but whatever you do with the progression, obviously try to aim to train harder than the game. Why is that? Is because it's always easier to sort of slow down the game than to go hard. Okay, most of the people got injured not because they are unfit, etc., but they got injured because they get out of their sort of training zones. Either it's too much all of a sudden, either is they've been doing too little for so long, and then now as soon as they go back into the game, boom, they got injured. What we tend to do is we have a couple of injuries, so we do less contact session, more injuries, and then etc. etc. So it's like a dog trying to grab his tail. Keep the contact as much as you can within all your conditioning blocks and within all your trainings. You can't expect them to do something during the weekend that they didn't train during the week. So now during the game, what can you influence to make sure your conditioning session is on point? Okay, so obviously the players' numbers and the pitch size. Okay, try to keep it simple. As soon as you launch the exercise, within 30 seconds, 1 minute, the guys are on the go already. Okay, don't waste time talking on over complicating things. You want them to run, you want them to do high intensity actions, and you want them to execute drills. Okay, that's all you want. The rest just depends of what sort of cycle you're in within your attack or defense system. Control the time and the staff. If you're in charge, the best way most of the time is, if you want to work in training blocks or divide your groups, you set up yourself in the middle. You don't have to work around. You need to find a spot where you can see all of them. So you set up maybe 3 station in front of you, or 3 station around you, and then you're on the watch. And then every time you whistle and make sure everyone stick to the point. If your staff is also involved, you need to make sure they finish. If you start the exercise and then they keep talking, it's not gonna work. If you finish the exercise and then same, they are still involved, they want to do an extra 30 seconds because the exercise is good or whatever, is not gonna work as well. You need to make sure you stick to the point. And then encourage your players. They're gonna work hard for you, and then they want respect from you as well. Okay, they want to earn their sport, etc. So you need to reward them, you need to encourage them. They're coming from a day of work, or maybe sometimes they struggle at home with a baby, wives, or whatever the problem is. They want to come here and then do the best for you and your team. So make sure you encourage the guys, whatever they do. Maybe there's something at home that you are not aware of, so make sure you keep pushing these guys. And then just below, I set up a sort of example of how we do the session. For example, with the national team, we stay on the watch. It works, it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Then we review later and we try to improve it. Okay, we never skip the session. So, for instance, if I take exactly the same session, the exercise number 1, attacking drills, was a disaster, then the next session you have to do exactly the same exercise, but you have to improve it. Okay, that's the bottom line. You can't just skip it because it didn't work. You have to come back and fix the solution. Most of the time it's coming either from poor explanation, or maybe it's coming from lack of understanding or clarity from the players. Then the after, obviously the feedback and how you assess the session within your staff, or if you're on your own, is extremely important. But more important is to have a chat with your players. If you want to find out about the intensity of your sessions in terms of conditioning, if you want to see if you're on spot or not, you have to talk to your players, but a lot of them. That's the only thing that takes a bit of time, is you need to find out from your forwards, from your backs, how the intensity was. Obviously, if you talk to your prop and your fullback, you're gonna have two different point of views. So for one guy it was extremely hard, and for the other guy was the easiest ever. So you can't just rely on one point of view. So you need to have a sort of average to find out if your session was yes or no, on target with the intensity you wanted, etc., etc. Again, keep in mind that within your progression, you shouldn't go from easy to hard in one day. Okay, you got easy, medium, hard, and then that's it. You got already a progression just within these few words. How are you gonna assess the intensity if you want to push it a little bit further? There's something called the RP. So the RP is called rate of perceived exertion. So it's from 0 to 10. Okay, from 1 to 10. 1 is the easiest day of your life, 10 you're playing the All Blacks, basically. Okay, so the way you're gonna deal with it is you're gonna create a load. So what you do is you multiply the intensity of the training. So that's why you need to ask to several players. Let's say they found out that it's a 5, and you've been training for, in that case, 30 minutes. So that means the total load for that training will be 150. So then you can see it helps you to put a number to be able to measure the intensity of your training. It's not only like, nah, it wasn't hard. No, now you can put a number behind it, because then maybe next week you're gonna try to aim for 200, and then the week after for 250, and then the week after 250, or 300, etc., etc. So then it helps you to build up your load step by step. Okay, so that's what I've done in the different weeks. Obviously, the higher the intensity goes, and then the less time you spend on it. You have to do it, however, for every trainings, every game, if it's possible. So then you can set up targets for your players. You keep a progression, and then try to do something on Excel. So I will set up a file for you where you can put directly all the numbers with all the minutes, and then it will calculate the load directly. So again, the calculation in itself is very simple. So you multiply the intensity by the amount of time, and then it gives you a certain load. You can do that for every single exercise if you want to, but usually you try to have it for the overall training. Do's and don'ts. Even if we don't like to point fingers, it's it's just to give you a sort of idea of what sort of thing we try to look at. So the do is diversity. Try to include different stuff in your training, but on the other hand, try to duplicate as much as you can what you're gonna face on the weekend. If the guys that they have soft tissue injuries, is because you don't do enough high intensity things. If they have contact injuries, is either coming from a poor contact skills or a poor tackling technique. So you need to add some contact session into that. Optimize 2 weeks is more than enough. Especially an area that we often forget is the warm-ups. If you think about, if you take let's say 15-20 minutes max for a warm-up, then it's already twice a week. That's already 40 minutes. So that's almost an extra session right there. Okay. And then the last one, measure. You need to be able to explain to your players, if you do conditioning, you need to be able to test them. If you test them, there is a progression behind, and then there is a test again. You can't just test them in August, hammer them with conditioning, and then do nothing for the rest of the year. And then the don'ts. So punish. Never use punishment, conditioning as a punishment. Never helps. You didn't like to run as a player, so assume that they don't like it as well as players as well. The overload. Use progressive load. Don't try to go too hard too soon. I've seen many injuries in the past with people doing all of a sudden CrossFit, doing extra trainings on the summer. If you think about it, July and August is probably the hardest time where your players train. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna add CrossFit session, we're gonna add conditioning session, we're gonna add field session. So your players are coming from a month of July where most of them really enjoy the barbecues and the beers, to almost training 3 times within or 3 hours per session, maybe 2-3 times a week. And then as soon as the competition will start, you will peak too early. So by early September, you are at your best. But then once you're at the top, most of the time you try to go down. You have to manage that phase, because by October, that's it, everyone is injured. You don't have anyone to play, and then the shitty weather starts, and then that becomes even worse. And then the last one, copy. Same. I've seen many programs where the guys just copy paste what the Springboks or the All Blacks are doing. It's huge mistakes. You know your players better. You know your environment. You are doing already a great job. So don't try to copy all these guys. We all pick and choose ideas from all different coaches, but make it your own. Make it your own system. Make it your own way. But don't try to copy paste conditioning programs from professional teams. Again, they are professional guys, so it's almost like trying to manage a Ferrari when you got only a Ford in your clubs. So that's it for me. So try to find out all your different ideas, and then we'll see later what it brings. But again, it takes time to create progressive load. It takes time to create a system. It takes time to do all this. So with 2 training sessions a week, it will come down to choices. You can't train everything. Make sure you pick up your battles. Make sure you choose your conditioning session. Make sure you assess it. Make sure you have feedbacks from your players. But the most important is plan it properly. If you got a proper plan, a progression, and an assessment, I don't see how it's gonna fail. Okay, and again, you know your environment better than anyone else, so you're already doing a great job. Keep up, stay safe, and then hopefully see you soon. Bye.